Welcome to Pulse of Stories, the place where stories come alive and take you on an unforgettable journey. We're thrilled to have you here, and we can't wait to share something truly special with you. Each story on our channel is crafted to spark your imagination, inspire your thoughts, and maybe even make your heart skip a beat. So, sit back, relax, and let the pulse of this story captivate you. Don't forget to stay with us until the end, because the best part is always just around the corner. We're so glad you're here. The hidden secrets of Eleanor's childhood home. What awaits her in Willow Hill after all these years? The silvery morning unfolded slowly, like an old letter forgotten at the bottom of a drawer. A light mist stretched across the hills, wrapping the road like a soft quilt. Eleanor's car ambled along the winding path, its tires quietly rustling against the fallen autumn leaves. The air carried a gentle scent of wood smoke and damp earth. A faint breeze swayed the treetops, and distant birds seemed to whisper ancient secrets to one another. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the air infused with nostalgia and silence. This place breathed memories, ones long buried deep within her soul. "Willow Hill, finally!" she murmured as the silhouette of the old house emerged on the horizon. Sunlight cautiously broke through the gray mist, as if hesitant to disturb the sacred tranquility. The house on the hill was just as she remembered. A modest stone cottage with ivy climbing its walls, embracing them like an old friend. The windows, once sparkling in the sun, were now veiled with the soft patina of time. Eleanor stopped her car by the gate. The wooden structure, weathered and slightly askew, looked as though it had tried valiantly to stand the test of years. She stepped out of the car, her footsteps muffled by the soft grass sprinkled with crisp leaves. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the gate open. The long, drawn-out creak of the hinges wasn't alarming but welcoming, like the greeting of an old companion. She smiled at the sound, feeling warmth swell in her heart. The house greeted her with silence, though it was not an unsettling silence. It was almost comforting. She climbed the porch steps, the wooden boards creaking beneath her feet in response. She ran her hand along the door's surface. Its rough texture reminded her of childhood days spent playing near these very walls, with her grandmother calling her in for lunch from the porch. Inserting the key into the lock, she felt a slight resistance before the mechanism gave way. The door opened slowly, revealing a familiar yet long-forgotten room. The smell of aged wood mixed with damp leaves enveloped her, like a well-worn blanket. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, dancing across the wooden floors. Everything was as she remembered, yet at the same time, entirely different. She wandered through the room, letting her eyes linger on familiar details. The large fireplace in the corner, the cracked plaster on the walls, and the shelves filled with old books. Each object seemed part of a greater story, fragments of a puzzle waiting to be pieced together. Eleanor brushed the dust off one of the shelves and stumbled upon a small porcelain figurine her grandmother had once given her. "Hello, old friend," she whispered with a smile, placing the figurine back on the shelf. Eleanor sank into an old armchair by the window and closed her eyes. Memories began to surface. Sunlight playing in her hair, her small feet running across the grass, the warm voice of her grandmother reading her bedtime stories. These recollections were tender, like warm water gently surrounding her, bringing a sense of peace. Outside, the willow tree's leaves softly whispered their songs to the wind, as if inviting her to listen. Home, she thought, feeling a long-awaited calm settle over her. As she sat in the chair, enveloped in the stillness, her gaze fell once again upon the room. Time seemed to slow, and even the faintest sounds, the creak of wood, the rustle of wind outside, took on significance, like pieces of a forgotten melody. Reaching for the table beside her, she noticed something tucked away behind a dusty curtain in the corner. A chest she had forgotten about. It was the very chest that had once been her childhood hideaway, a treasure trove for her secrets and dreams. She got up, brushed off the dust, and hesitated for just a moment before lifting the lid. Inside were old books, faded photographs, and a few cherished toys from her younger years. But among them, one item caught her eye. It was a small, leather-bound journal, weathered with time, its golden letters barely legible on the cover. Tales of Old Times. Eleanor picked up the journal. Its surface was smooth but felt slightly warm, as though it had just been held, not buried for years. She carefully opened it. The first page was blank, but on the second, an inscription appeared in elegant handwriting. For those who remember, this journal holds stories that must not be forgotten. Eleanor froze, her eyes fixed on the words. The message felt oddly personal, as if written specifically for her. She glanced around the familiar room, half expecting something to change. But everything remained as it was. The silence, the faint movement of the curtains, the sunlight playing on the walls. Stories that must not be forgotten, she repeated in her mind. It sounded like a reminder, something vital she needed to recall. Unable to resist, she turned the page, and words began to appear before her eyes, as if someone were writing them in real time. Eleanor, you once knew me. We all knew one another. But time erases memory. I hope you can understand what I've left for you. You alone can see what others cannot. Her heart raced as she read. These lines carried a message, a clue. She glanced around the quiet room and suddenly felt as though the house itself held a hidden consciousness, remembering everything that had ever happened within its walls. She continued reading. The willow tree on the hill. You must find it. It has been waiting for you, as it always has. This place holds not just memories but answers. Eleanor looked out the window. The breeze had picked up slightly, and the branches of the willow tree swayed, as if whispering a secret just for her. She knew this tree. In her childhood, it had been her sanctuary, the center of her games and her grandmother's stories. But what did it hide? Why was it calling to her now? Taking a deep breath, she felt something stir within her, a long-forgotten yearning to uncover the truth. The journal, the words, the directions, they couldn't be a coincidence. She knew she had to go. Closing the journal, Eleanor stood and approached the window. The atmosphere had grown more mystical. The fog thickened, draping the hills in a ghostly veil, and the willow tree stood in the distance like a shadowy sentinel. "I'll find it," she said aloud, her voice steady and resolute. This journey wasn't just a physical one. It was something deeper. The house was ready to share its secret, and Eleanor was ready to listen. The forest grew silent as the mist thickened, wrapping the earth like a gentle veil. Soon, Eleanor stood at the base of the hill where the famous willow tree loomed. Still cloaked in shadow, its twisted branches and ancient, weathered trunk spoke of centuries of resilience and countless secrets. Eleanor approached the tree, pressing her palm against its rough bark. The sensation was extraordinary. It was as if the tree shared a fragment of its strength with her. Running her hand along its surface, she felt a subtle warmth seep into her skin. The feeling was strange but comforting, filling her with calm and resolve. "The tree of memory," she whispered, the words surfacing in her mind as if they had always been there, waiting to be spoken. She glanced around. The ground beneath the willow was soft, and its gently swaying leaves seemed to hum with expectation. Suddenly, something on the ground caught her eye, a small metallic ring, partially obscured by moss, lying inconspicuously at the base of the tree. Kneeling, she carefully picked up the ring. Its surface was cold to the touch, yet it captivated her with its intricate, time-worn design. It looked ancient, its surface weathered with age, and on it was an unfamiliar symbol, a circle intersected by a line pointing toward the center. Eleanor couldn't tear her eyes away from the ring. It was evident this artifact held meaning. As she ran her fingers over its etched surface, a faint shiver coursed through her. This ring, it wasn't just an object. It was a piece of something larger. With the ring cradled in her palm, she stood and turned back to the willow tree. Its towering presence seemed to radiate an unspoken wisdom, as if it could see into depths she couldn't yet fathom. The mist around her thickened, and the air grew heavy with both cold and a strange, almost electric tension. "I have to keep going," she said aloud, trying to steady her thoughts. But where was she meant to go next? What awaited her beyond this point? Reluctantly, she turned away and began walking back toward the house, her steps slow and deliberate, as though she wished to linger in this moment of mystique. The ring swung gently in her hand, its presence as weighty as her thoughts, which swirled like the mist, obscuring the path behind her. Back at the house, the ring seemed alive in her palm, pulsing with an enigmatic energy. Sitting at the old wooden table, Eleanor placed it carefully before her, tracing its edges with her fingers. It grew more mysterious with each passing moment, and she felt certain it was connected to something profound, something she had yet to uncover. She began searching through the old books lining the house's dusty shelves. Her fingers brushed over faded spines until she found a thick tome filled with regional legends. As she opened it, a strange sense of familiarity washed over her, as though the book itself recognized her. "This place holds a power hidden from ordinary eyes," read the opening line. Eleanor felt an inexplicable tug deep within her as the words resonated. She read on. "They say the willow tree on the hill is no ordinary tree. It holds the memories of those who came before us. But to understand what it guards, one must find its key. The key was lost on the night the old house burned, yet now it may be found again." She froze, the last words echoing in her mind. The key was lost on the night the old house burned. Her parents had once told her that before she was born, their family had lived in a house that burned to the ground. They had moved to this cozy cottage afterward, but had never fully explained what happened that fateful night. It was a story wrapped in shadow, even for them. She glanced again at the ring, its strange symbol glowing faintly in her mind's eye. Could this be the key the book spoke of? Eleanor felt an undeniable pull. This ring wasn't just tied to the willow tree. It was intertwined with the very essence of this place and the secrets it held. Taking the ring in hand, she resolutely made her way back to the willow tree. The night stretched before her like a bridge leading into the unknown. Each step she took under the heavy mist felt deliberate, yet there was no turning back now. The answers awaited her, and she could feel their presence beckoning. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with quiet anticipation, as though she was about to reunite with a long-lost part of herself. Reaching the hill once more, she found herself standing beneath the ancient tree, its dark branches stretching upward like fingers grasping at the heavens. Standing before it, she felt the ring grow warm in her hand, as though it was alive and responding to her presence. Scanning the tree's massive trunk, her eyes fell on a peculiar hollow at its base, a perfect fit for the ring she held. Carefully, she inserted the ring into the crevice. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the earth beneath her feet began to tremble gently. The roots of the willow shuddered, and before her, the ground gave way to reveal a hidden door embedded in the earth. The door beneath the willow opened slowly, as if welcoming her home. Inside lay darkness, but Eleanor didn't hesitate. She stepped into the unknown, feeling the weight of the earth envelop her fears and anxieties. The darkness thickened around her, but she switched on her flashlight and moved cautiously forward. A long corridor stretched before her, its walls made of ancient stone. The air was heavy yet oddly fresh, untouched by the passage of time. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor, each sound amplifying the gravity of her journey. Eleanor pressed on, knowing that with every step, she drew closer to a truth hidden deep within these walls. The corridor led her to a small room. In the center stood an ancient table, upon which rested a large scroll. Eleanor approached cautiously and unfurled it. The scroll was covered in maps and symbols she couldn't understand. Yet among the strange markings, one stood out immediately, the same symbol that was on the ring. Eleanor surveyed the room. It held everything one might expect from a place hidden deep underground. Old books, candles, amulets, and peculiar artifacts. But the scroll was the centerpiece. She felt it was the very thing she was meant to find. Running her fingers over the scroll, she encountered words written in an unfamiliar language. Yet they appeared clear and comprehensible to her, as if they needed no translation. She read aloud. The one who possesses the ring will enter the place where memory is stored, but only the one who opens their soul will see the secrets of the past. At that moment, the air in the room shifted. The fog in her mind began to dissipate, and she realized that the mystery of this place wasn't just about her past. It was tied to her entire life. Clutching the ring to her chest, Eleanor closed her eyes. Images from her past began to flood her mind. Her childhood, memories of her grandmother, late-night stories by the fire. She realized that the ring wasn't just a key. It was a bridge between worlds. Eleanor stood there, pressing the ring against her chest when an overwhelming sense of déjà vu washed over her. The room began to blur, and flashes of light danced in the air as though she were diving deep into her own memories. She bit her lip, trying to stay grounded in reality, but her senses pulled her further into the past. The mist thickened, and within it, strange yet familiar visions appeared. Fragmented memories pierced her consciousness like lightning. She saw herself as a little girl running across the same hill, leaves crunching underfoot, while her grandmother sat on the porch, recounting tales. It all felt like an old film, slow-motion frames, the sounds of nature, and the creak of weathered wooden boards beneath her steps. Eleanor shut her eyes, attempting to focus. I have to understand what's happening, she thought. I must see what's hidden. Suddenly, the mists parted, and she found herself back in the room with the scroll. But everything felt different now. The room no longer seemed empty. It was filled with something unseen but palpable. She understood that these were memories, alive and tangible, as if she could walk through them once more. The scroll in her hands began to glow softly. Her gaze fell again on the strange symbols etched upon it. She began to read them again, and this time they were no longer a foreign language. The words became clear, as though she had always known them. Will you open your eyes to the past to uncover the heart of this world's secrets? Eleanor turned and noticed two figures in the far corner of the room. Their forms were indistinct, but their presence was undeniable. They appeared to be human, yet something about them felt otherworldly. She sensed they played a crucial role in what was happening to her. One was a tall man with dark eyes and thick hair. He stood still, his gaze fixed intently on Eleanor. The other was a woman with hair as white as moonlight, cascading gently over her shoulders. Her eyes were closed, but she seemed deeply attuned to everything around her. Eleanor's breath slowed. Who are these people? Why are they here? We are the keepers, the woman said in a voice so soft it was almost inaudible. Eleanor stepped closer, her movements tentative but driven by an inner compulsion to listen. The man remained silent, his watchful eyes tracking her every move. The woman raised her hand, and a shimmering energy enveloped Eleanor, as though the room itself had come alive. You came seeking answers, and you will find them, she said, her tone resolute. But be cautious. You do not yet know all the consequences. Eleanor hesitated, but felt her curiosity outweigh her fear. She asked the question that had been haunting her. What is this place? Why is the ring so important? The woman stepped forward, her presence growing even more palpable. She extended her hand toward the scroll Eleanor was holding and spoke softly. You are the last of those who can restore the lost connection. But your path will not be easy. The ring will open the gates. You must be ready to understand that this mystery is not just your past. It is your future. The words sank into Eleanor's consciousness as if they were a part of her. In that moment, it became clear that all the events she had experienced, all the enigmatic moments she had lived through, were no coincidence. Everything was connected. Finally, the man spoke, his voice deep yet gentle. This land has not merely survived the passage of time. It is imbued with its energy. You must understand that the past is not merely a collection of memories. It is a set of laws that still hold sway. This house, the tree, the ring, they were created to bind you to what has been lost. You must return to the origins to find your path. Eleanor's thoughts raced. Everything she knew about her childhood, her family, and the house now carried an entirely different meaning. This wasn't just a place for reminiscing. The house, the tree, the ring, they were all part of something much larger. The woman smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering in the dim light. "You are ready," she said. "The journey ahead will be long, but you are not alone. We have always been here, and now you will understand why." Eleanor felt the room begin to spin, yet the world itself seemed to remain still. Parallel realities, time, and space merged, and she finally understood that her place was here, in this realm where the truth revealed itself only to those prepared to see it. Suddenly, she felt a gentle push, soft, almost imperceptible, like the caress of a night wind. She opened her eyes and found herself back on the hill where she had stood earlier. But now, everything was different. Everything was brighter, sharper, as if the world around her had come to life. The mystery was only beginning. Through the twilight, softly illuminated by the gentle light of the moon, Eleanor felt the world around her shift once again. She stood on the hill beside the willow tree, gazing at a familiar yet strangely altered landscape. Everything seemed slightly distorted, not quite how she remembered it. The evening air was cool but fresh, and Eleanor felt her breathing slow, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of this place. Before her appeared the same two figures, the man with dark eyes and the woman with white hair. They looked at her with calm and knowing expressions, as though they had been waiting for her return for a very long time. There was no curiosity in their eyes, only understanding. Once again, Eleanor felt as though she were slipping between worlds, briefly stepping out of the usual bounds of time and space. Everything around her lost its sharpness, and she sensed that her connection to this place, to this house, and to the figures before her was no mere coincidence. "You've arrived," the man said, his voice deep and resonant, like a quiet evening rain. Eleanor swallowed, unable to respond. The words she wanted to say seemed stuck in her throat, as though nothing she could say would matter. She knew she wasn't here by chance. Everything that had happened had led her to this moment. The woman with white hair stepped forward, extending her hand. "You must understand that everything you see is a reflection of what was and what will be," she said, her voice soft yet carrying a timeless weight. "You have come to the gate. All who seek answers and are ready to delve into the essence of this world pass through here." Eleanor furrowed her brow, her thoughts swirling rapidly. She recalled the words from the scroll she had read earlier. "You must be ready to understand that this mystery is not just your past but your future as well." How was this connected to her past? Why had she been chosen to uncover these answers? As though reading her thoughts, the man continued, "You stand on the threshold of a great journey. We can guide you, but you must choose for yourself whether to proceed. The gate does not simply lead to new worlds. It reveals the entirety of your life." Eleanor tightened her grip on the ring in her hands, its warmth now more tangible than ever. She felt as though she was standing at the edge of something monumental. She couldn't turn back now. The path had already begun, and she needed to see it through. "What do I need to do?" she finally asked, still unsure of the full weight of her decision. The woman with white hair smiled. "You must open your eyes to what is hidden from ordinary people. This house, this tree, this ring, everything you see here holds its own story, and that story will not end until you uncover it completely." The man standing beside her added, "You were a part of this, and perhaps you are the last one who can complete what began so many years ago. The journey will not be easy, but you are not alone. We are with you, and our world is always near." Eleanor felt her heart clench with the weight of responsibility. She had to solve this mystery, and with each step in her life, the enigma seemed to grow deeper and more intricate. Suddenly, a cloud veiled the sky, and the mist that had earlier only lightly shrouded the hill grew denser. It wasn't cold, but its shade seemed old and forgotten, as though locked away by time. The atmosphere became ominous. "What's happening?" Eleanor asked, feeling the mist grow heavier with every passing moment. The woman with white hair raised her hand, and a glowing energy surrounded them, like light piercing through the dense darkness. The mist began to recede. "This is not our world. It began to change the moment you arrived," she said. "Now you must decide whether you want to become part of what is happening here or return to your ordinary life." Eleanor looked down at the ring. It still radiated a soft light, and she felt her heart respond to its call. This path was her choice, and she knew that if she returned, everything she had experienced would remain only a dream, fading with the first light of dawn. "I want to understand," Eleanor said, her voice filled with determination. The woman with white hair nodded, and the man's voice, now deeper and more penetrating, spoke. "Then follow us. The journey will be long, and you will learn everything hidden beyond the gate. But remember, every door you open will lead you to a new world. Are you ready for this?" Eleanor, not yet fully aware of what awaited her, nodded. In that moment, she knew her life would never be the same. The path she was about to walk would uncover not only her own future, but also the secrets long hidden from view. Before her, new gates began to appear, opening as though space and time themselves were responding to her decision. All that remained now was to step forward where she was being called. Eleanor stood before the gates as they opened slowly in front of her. She felt her heart racing, her chest tightening with anticipation. These were no ordinary gates. They glowed with a soft silvery light, and every line, every curve, every detail of their design carried a meaning she couldn't fully grasp. The man with dark eyes and the woman with white hair stood beside her, ready to lead the way, but they remained silent. Eleanor understood that she had to make the choice that would define how her life unfolded. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the ring that had become part of her very existence. "Are you ready to proceed?" the woman asked gently, her gaze warm but filled with meaningful expectation. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down at the ring and remembered how it had first come into her possession. Everything about it was so strange and mysterious, as though it held the entire truth she sought, but only beyond the bounds of time. She stepped forward. As soon as Eleanor took her first step, the space around her began to transform. The gates before her seemed to dissolve into the air, replaced by an entirely new world where time flowed differently. Shadows danced across the ground, and the stars in the sky felt close enough to touch. This was another realm. One moment she was there, and the next, she found herself in a forest filled with colossal trees. Their roots intertwined in intricate patterns, and their branches stretched skyward like giant hands embracing the heavens. The mist here wasn't just mist. It was part of the very essence of nature. Wisps of cloud floated above, shifting from transparent to almost opaque. Time seemed non-existent here, and everything was imbued with an ancient energy that exuded eternity. The woman with white hair walked ahead, her footsteps making no sound. The man followed silently, his dark eyes watchful and calm, though they burned with something deep and magnetic that drew Eleanor toward him. Eleanor felt as though every step she took in this new world absorbed her more deeply. She walked along a path surrounded by towering trees, and with each step, she felt the energy of this place seeping into her soul. "There are no boundaries here," the woman said quietly. "You must understand that you're not just traveling through space. You are moving through all possible realities, every timeline that could ever exist. Everything is interconnected." Eleanor paused. Each word resonated deeply within her. She began to grasp that this was not merely a physical journey. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling and being rewoven around her. She was walking along a path that existed not only in this world, but across all possible worlds. Every decision you make, every step you take, has the power to alter the future, the man added. Here, time isn't linear. In this forest, you will see your life not as a single sequence of events, but as countless possibilities. You'll see what could have been if you had chosen differently. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. The weight of these thoughts and emotions was overwhelming, yet she couldn't stop. She knew she had to continue this journey, for only then could she uncover what had been hidden from her. "Can the future be changed?" she asked, turning to them. The woman with white hair looked at her with an expression of profound understanding. "Perhaps," she said, "but changing what has already happened isn't always the answer. Sometimes, it's more important to accept what was and move forward with newfound knowledge. But you will understand your choices better than ever before." When Eleanor raised her eyes again, a new sight greeted her. At the very center of the forest stood a stone etched with ancient symbols. These symbols resembled the ones she had seen on the scroll but were different, radiant and pure, as if they were carved not from stone but from time itself. Eleanor approached, her hands reaching out to the stone. The moment she touched its surface, she felt the space around her begin to shift. The stone started to glow, and she realized she was standing at the threshold of something monumental. "This is one of the crossroads," the woman said. "Here, you can choose which path you wish to follow. This stone will show you several possible futures, but remember, by choosing one, you will change your fate. Are you ready to see?" Eleanor nodded, her heart racing. As she ran her fingers across the stone, its surface quivered beneath her touch. Suddenly, images began to flood her mind. She saw countless variations of her life, different decisions, different fates, each leading to a unique end. She watched as these visions unfolded, one after another. In some, she was a happy woman with a family. In others, she walked a solitary path. In yet others, she fought for something great. Each of these lives was hers, yet they all led to vastly different outcomes. She felt an overwhelming sense of empowerment. She couldn't change the past, but she could shape her future. It was terrifying, yet liberating. Now you see that there isn't one singular path, the man said, his eyes glimmering with wisdom. You create your destiny by choosing what matters most to you. Eleanor stepped back from the stone, the weight of her decisions pressing heavily on her. The world around her became misty again, but she now understood that her choices would define her future. Eleanor felt time shift again. With every step she took, the world around her grew increasingly unstable. The once gentle mist now enveloped everything. The trees began to appear fragile, as if they were made of the thinnest glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. She turned to see where her companions were, but they were no longer by her side. The woman with white hair and the man had vanished, dissolving into the strange atmosphere as if their presence had been an illusion. Now that she had made her choice, they were no longer needed. Eleanor was alone, and then, standing amidst the mist, she saw two paths. One was bathed in soft starlight, gentle and inviting, while the other was